For $400, you can get a pretty beefy console. The PS4 Pro just released, and while it's a huge improvement over the original, it doesn't comprise of nearly the amount of features and options, as well as possibilities, that you get with a PC. Things like upgradable hardware, no membership fee, cheaper games, and the ability to do more than just play games are really enticing reasons. And with this PC being able to handle 1080p 60 FPS no problem, makes this a really solid option. Greetings everyone, my name is Proto, and I'm so surprised that console fanboys throw in the price argument as if it has any sort of validity. Not that they know any better. Trust me, that claim is faker than Kim Kardashian's tits. For $150 you can get a GPU that performs very similar to that of the PS4 Pro. If we're being real though, the equivalent GPU on the Pro is something like an underclocked RX 480, so a little weaker than a stock RX 470. What can you get from that? Because it sounds a bit like gibberish for a lot of you. Well, you're going to be running games very similar, and the extra options, expandability, and things like that mean that you get more from this. Before we start, you should know that this build won't include an OS, mouse, or keyboard. That said, you can easily find this stuff very cheap online, and it roughly costs the same as 1 year of PlayStation Plus. And guess what? You don't actually have to pay for online on PC, let alone risk your PayPal account. But yeah, this build includes just the tower, so let's cut the convo and get right into it. For the CPU of the Intel Pentium G4400 3.3GHz dual-core processor, costing $58. Around the same price point, you can get either an AMD Athlon or the older G3258. This CPU is better IPC than both of them though, but yeah, it's a great budget option, and whilst it would be safer to go with an i3 or i5 for future compatibility's sake, we don't have that kind of money or luxury to spend, and you can always upgrade to a Skylake or Kaby Lake CPU if you want to. This CPU has 2 cores and 2 threads, so whilst it will lag behind in games that are CPU intensive, not many of them actually are compared to the huge library of games on PC. And as for people complaining last time about games not supporting hardware with 2 or less CPU cores, my answer to that is that it's often down to developers just stroking their own dicks. Unofficial patches brought by the community solve those issues time and time again. Yes, it might not run as well as an i3 or i5, but it will still run. I'm looking at you, Far Cry. Most of the common games people play are GPU intensive, and so going with this CPU is great because it's an excellent starting point. For the motherboard, we have the ASRock H110M DGS costing $51. Now the reason as to why I went with this is simple. It's cheap. Nothing more, nothing less. A couple of weeks ago they were about $10 cheaper, so just make sure and check that the HDS version isn't cheaper. But yeah, this board by far isn't bad. It's got 2 memory slots supporting up to 32 gigs of DDR4 2133MHz, has 4 SATA ports, 1 X16 slot and 1 X1 slot. This means that you can use a graphics card, and in the future you can also add a Wi-Fi module, Elgato HD60, dedicated sound card, or anything else that fits in the X1 slot. It's got 4 SATA ports, as I've just said, meaning that you can get up to 4 drives, and trust me, that'll come in handy later. Back panel, we have 2 PS2 ports, 2 USB 3.0 ports, 4 USB 2.0 ports, 1GB LAN port, and 3 audio connectors. It's really simple and bare bones, but since mobiles don't affect FPS, this money can be better spent on other things that do, such as the GPU. Memory is actually pretty dope. The Avexir Core Series 8GB 1MB DDR4 2400 memory comes in at only $41 and is one of the most inexpensive kits from retailers. The cool thing about them is that they light up blue. They have an excellent pulsing look which fits nicely with our build, and using 1 stick of RAM will allow us to add a second one in the future without having to replace this one. Also, adding 1 stick of RAM and not 2 shouldn't affect FPS in any noticeable way, and 8GB is plenty even by today's standards. Now this budget and SSD HD combo is really out of the question, and so whilst you can go for a 120GB SSD, most people will prefer the Western Digital Caviar Blue 1TB 3.5-inch 7200 RPM internal hard drive costing $49, and that's because of capacity. It is enough to load your OS, programs, games and other data onto it as well, and afterwards if you do end up getting an SSD too, you can migrate your OS onto that as well. Again, in our system we can up to 4 drives, and so this is the way to go. Now just over 3 weeks ago, Nvidia gave the good to go to all retailers selling the GTX 1050 and the 1050 Ti. To say that I'm impressed with the performance is an understatement. So for the GPU, we have the EVGA Geforce GTX 1050 4GB SE Gaming A6 2.0 video card costing $140. This is an excellent card if you're looking to play games at 1080p 60 FPS. This card packs a serious punch, and for a system like this, it's excellent. To put things in perspective, based on benchmarks from multiple sources, links in the description by the way, it performs somewhere between the RX 460 and the RX 470 from AMD. It's also that kind of price point too. As you'd expect, it performs better than last generation's GTX 950, and this is a great budget card which has a lot of little nice additions. For example, there's no need to connect any power cables to this. Yeah, no 6 pins and no 8 pins either. Like the 950 low power model, it uses power from the PCIe slot drawing only 75 watts, and based on the fact that this is a Pascal card, it does seem to run fairly cool, quiet, and has very little power draw. This card supports NVIDIA Surround for multi-monitor setups, Dynamic Super Resolution for upscaling, we just talked about that a second ago, CUDA, and Geforce Experience, as well as a bunch of other things you don't really care about. Now, CUDA is a computing platform and programming model that enables a dramatic increase in computing performance by harnessing the power of the GPU to speed up the most demanding tasks that run on your PC. In other words, it's GPU acceleration and speeds up things such as rendering complex compositions and doing very intensive tasks much faster. Whilst much higher end cards do use CUDA for deep learning, and by NASA, you notice that applications that support CUDA such as After Effects, Premiere Pro, and Media Encoder benefit from this massively, and rendering takes a lot less time. I've noticed speeds up to the 500% mark, and that's stupid significant. Geforce Experience, on the other hand, has a very different purpose. This application manages your NVIDIA drivers so that they're always up to date, gives you the option to optimize your graphics settings per game basis with only one click, and gives you access to Shadowplay. The gameplay you're seeing right now, yeah, that was Shadowplay. It uses the dedicated H.264 encoder on the GPU to encode the gameplay. It has a manual record as well as a recording buffer, like the Elgato's flashback recording, and it also has some basic streaming functionality. I personally wouldn't recommend streaming on this PC due to the CPU, but the encoder does give you that option if you decide to change out the CPU to an i5 or i7, or you just kind of want to touch the surface with streaming. This card has 4 gigs of VRAM and gives you 1 DVD port, 1 display port, and 1 HDMI port in terms of connectivity. Overall, a really solid card that gives you great performance at 1080p and certainly doesn't break the bank. As for the case, with a Fractal Design Core 1000 USB 3.0 MicroATX mid-tower case costing $25. Now, it is a budget case that looks a lot better than any similarly priced alternative, though as you can imagine, that's very subjective. There's 2 external 5.25-inch bays for things like DVD readers, fan controllers, or a hard drive caddy, and you also get 2 3.5-inch bays for hard drives, and USB 3.0 headers, which as you'd expect, that's a standard. This is a budget case, so it is missing things like proper cable routing and proper fan mounting, but then again, it's only $25. And lastly, we have the EVGA 430W A+ certified ATX power supply, costing $30. But assembly, this power supply will be enough for this build, and whilst it's very budget orientated, it's enough for our purpose. Based on the combination that we've chosen, it will enjoy anywhere near 430 watts anyway. Looking for geek and gaming collectibles? Loot Crate is essentially Comic-Con in a box. Every month there's new goodies from collectibles to apparel to tech gadgets and other epic gear. Check out the link in the video description to learn more. So hopefully this build did help you out if you're looking to drop say $450 at Christmas on a new rig with peripherals and an OS. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to see more content like this. If you need any help with PC gaming or just have built a new rig, tweet me that shit. Until next week, this has been Proto. Adios.
Back from the dead.